Hello, and welcome to another episode of The Rundown. I'm Sunny Galt. I'm a messenger with United Network News, UNN, and we are the official news channel for CARE, which stands for the Center for Amity and Restoration of Earth. And we discuss the real news because we need more real news on this planet. We have mainstream media and we have alternative media and we have a lot of people that are yapping, but not a lot of people that are giving out real information, reliable information about what's happening on this planet right now. We believe that you need to know what's going on now, so you are more informed, and so you can make better decisions on where you want to take this planet. Because you are alive right now on this planet at an amazing time where we get an opportunity to restore this beautiful planet that we live on, Earth. And that has never happened before. And in order to understand how important restoration is, you need to know what we've been through and what we're still kind of going through, because there's still some remnants of deep state that are trying to prevent that from happening, which they, of course, will be unable to do, try as they might. You have to give them an A for effort because they are doing everything they can to bring down humanity at this point. So we discuss the real news, and we have a newscast that is released through our website every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. If you want more information about that and a little bit more about who we are, you can visit unitednetwork.earth. There is a membership fee if you want to get the news right when it comes out, but the newscasts are also published on YouTube and Rumble, assuming we're not censored, about a week after they're aired through our app. What this podcast is it's a week in review. So I like to go through some of the big stories that we talked about this previous Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And this is a great opportunity if you guys may have missed a newscast, or maybe you couldn't catch any of the newscasts this past week. Maybe you're not a member and you haven't had an opportunity to hear it. So this will kind of be a sneak peek for you about what's coming up on YouTube and Rumble. But we highlight some of the stories we cover on the news. And that includes going through some of our local stories as told through the eyes of our field messengers. We also talk about the new Earth and get to know ourselves a little bit better, and our amazing, what I call superhuman abilities that we have that have laid dormant for a very long time that are now coming back online. We talk about regional stories that impact you guys. So we don't really care about what governments are doing. That's all, those are part of the crew that just keep yapping, right? They're yapping and not doing anything. So that's not really of interest to us. Those people are puppets anyways. They never called the shots. But we do talk about stories and things that would impact you specifically. So if they do pass something that's going to impact you right away, some sort of legislation, we let you know about that, as well as just general information that would help you in your different areas of the world. And then we have what we call the World Situation Report. That's with Kimberly Goguen from the Office of the Guardian. And that's information I promise you will not hear anywhere else unless they're taking it, stealing our content and putting it up other places, which we know some people do that. But this is focused on not just deep state stuff, but what God, the creator of the universe, is doing right now, which is really exciting. And you guys are all part of this. So again, it's important to know what's going on. Some of the stuff we talk about is going to be kind of shocking. So if you are brand new, first of all, welcome. You might be, shocked and surprised by some of the stuff that we say. But we have the highest security clearance on the planet. So we really do know what we're talking about. Our clearance is above government's. It's huge, okay? And we access this through something called the Alpha system, which you'll probably hear a little bit more about today. And if the information is shocking to you, then, that's okay. I encourage you guys to stick with us because, again, we're trying to get the truth out to as many people as possible. We always encourage you guys to think critically. Don't just take what we have to say. There's a lot of information that we talk about that can be cross-referenced in different ways. So hop online, do a little bit of research, follow up on some of the things we're talking about, connect some of the dots for yourself. This is really important that you understand this whole process because we got in trouble with just listening to talking heads that just were giving us fake information now for decades. And we can't do that anymore. We have to think for ourselves. So we hope you will do that. As far as announcements, the only announcement I have is to wish all the moms out there a very happy Mother's Day. As I'm recording this, it is Saturday, so tomorrow is Mother's Day here in the U.S. And if you guys don't already know, I'm a mom. I've got 4 kids, so we've got some special stuff planned for tomorrow. And it's always a special day. So I know it can be a sad day for some people. Our hearts are with all the moms and anyone that's impacted by this. We certainly wish you the best day possible. Now, coming up in today's episode, I just want to quickly go through some stuff so you guys know what's on the horizon. Should you stick through, hopefully you will listen to the whole thing. We have field messenger reports from Australia, Uganda, Italy, Norway, Romania, and Ireland. In the New Earth, we're going to talk about some of the benefits of essential oils, one of my favorite. I love essential oils, have them all over my house. We're going to talk about body connection for children, how important that is. So we'll explain a little bit more in just a second. And we're also going to talk about holistic and natural pet food for your pets, primarily cats and dogs, because it's not necessarily what they say on the packaging, which most of you probably know. All right, in our regional stories, we cover a ton of stories on the newscast, and so I've got to kind of pick and choose which stories we do in our regional news. But I usually divide these up according to topics. So we're going to talk about jobs and employment. We've got some stories on media and journalism, as well as health and medical stories. And then finally, our world situation report with Kimberly Goguen. We're going to talk about why the cost of food has gone up significantly. I know they claim it's inflation. That is a lie. Inflation in general is kind of a big lie. It's just a way for them to get more money out of you. But this in particular is really devious what they've done. So we'll talk about that. We're going to discuss operating systems and how more and more deep state operating systems are being taken over by Ground Command, how she took over the base platform for what the deep state is now using is their new currency. So they can't use that anymore. Too bad, so sad. And we also have some information for people who are planning CARE projects. So CARE is going to be funding projects that help humanity, that help transform our planet for the good. And there's some things that you need to keep in mind because we still have some remnants from the deep state that may try to cause some problems, and you need to be aware of some stuff before you submit any proposals. So let's get started, guys. Today is May 11th, 2024. Here's the rundown of stories you may have missed this week on UNN. All right, let's get started with our field messenger report. So our field messengers are the heart and soul of UNN. Because for many years, as I said previously, we have had people giving us the news, but it's always been through a particular lens, people with an agenda. And it's not always the journalist's fault. It is the structure, the media structure itself. So a reporter may want to tell the real story, but trust me, it's not just about what the reporter wants. I worked in the news industry for a while. It is about what the people over them have to say. You've got your news directors, you've got the people that run the TV stations or the newspapers or, whatever medium you're working with. And there are people at the top that have a very specific narrative. A lot of these people work for the CIA. And that is truth. So it's really hard to get real information out there, even if the reporter wants to tell a real story. So we believe the best way to get information out there is to have you tell your own story of what's happening in your community. Now, we realize you're not trained as journalists, and that's actually a good thing because I think we're all kind of tired of the fake journalism out there, right? Even the Mr. Journalism voice, we're kind of sick of that. I think social media and YouTube and all these different sites have proven that we really just want to connect with real people. And that's our field messengers. And so people get out their cell phone, which we pretty much all have nowadays. We got the camera and pretty good microphone that's built into your phone and show us what's going on. That could be more of a hard-hitting news story. We've had people cover fires and, people in war-torn areas and, just questioning the government in their areas, things like that. Or it could be a festival, something that's going on. Because the other thing that we have to keep in mind is we have, on purpose, been distanced from one another. And if you say a particular country, you have an idea based on media of what people have told you about what happens in that country. Most of it is lies. Most of it is just orchestrated lies. And so we have to get to know each other better. So even some of the stories that aren't as hard-hitting news are fascinating. Just showing us your area and what's going on and, different parks or different community events that are going on. It's all really interesting, and you're not going to see these stories anywhere else. Now, if you aren't a member, to be able to get access to these reports right away, because these stories are uploaded to our app individually, you can wait. And like I said, about a week later after the newscast comes out, you can check on YouTube and Rumble, and you can see these stories in the newscast because a lot of these are more visual. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Helen from Australia does a story. This is a personal experience that Helen had. So she had an issue, I believe, with her car, with the tires. She took her car in for a checkup of sorts, and the person running the business, which as I understand it was a larger business, like they had multiple locations, more well-known, she was a little dismayed because they said that she needed new tires and they were talking about the tread on her tires, and she kind of felt like the situation was off, using her own discernment, which we talk about a lot. And she took it to a local mechanic that she's used a lot. And he said, yeah, you certainly don't need new tires. Your tread is fine. I would have noticed this before. So she does a report just to be mindful of this kind of stuff. And this comes back to us living in a period, at least being used to living in a period of lack. In an age of lack where there isn't enough money. And, God bless the person, that was trying to sell her the tires, because he is probably trained, at a certain point to try to upsell people to get more tires. Maybe he even has a commission that's based on that, right? The whole system is set up for us to fail. And so it's not necessarily the employee's fault. They're just doing what they're told. But we need to be more mindful of this and really be able to call things out as we see them and not just do something because someone says, oh, you need new tires. That can be pretty expensive. So that's Helen's story. Also on Monday, we have a story from Mwanda Michael, who is out of eastern Uganda. And he shows us a get-together, kind of little event that's happening in his area for motocross. So motocross, if you guys aren't familiar, it's more like, you have motorcycles and, you may do different types of events and, people usually are wearing certain attire. And he was just showing us what's going on in Uganda for this. So it looked a little bit more impromptu, but he introduced us to some of the local riders, and some of them had some pretty cool gear, little get up, I won't call it a costume. What is it? Like a uniform, perhaps. So this kind of stuff happens in other countries. Again, this is just us getting to know each other a little bit better. And if you've never heard of motocross before, maybe you want to check that out. Then on Wednesday, we had two stories. Tony from Italy shows us a medieval sports day that took place in her area. It's called Calumbur. And this area is kind of known for this. And there's different districts, local districts in the area. They all dress up. I think she showed some sort of like procession down the street. It looked like kind of a cobblestone street. Quite cool, actually. People carrying banners and things like that, wearing medieval costumes. And then they have like little events that they would do, kind of like obstacle course stuff. They're like, pushing wooden wagons down the street, and it looked kind of cool. So you can check that out. Obviously kind of a throwback to the past for those people. Then Susan in Norway introduces us to what she calls a cold bath. Okay. So you probably have seen this. If you guys ever seen like the polar bear plunge when that was really popular on social media? That's kind of what this reminded me of, but it's not some weird gimmicky thing from social media. It's winter bathing, okay? So it's like there's snow on the ground, ice everywhere, and people are getting into lakes and rivers and things like that and submerging themselves, maybe not all the way underwater. I think what I saw mostly in her video was like up to the neck. And you don't have to stay in there a long time. Some people are just kind of dipping in and dipping out, but there can be a lot of health benefits to that kind of shock to your immune system, your nervous system. Now, it's not for everybody, so obviously, consult with, whoever you consult with for health purposes to find out if this is right for you. If you have some heart conditions and things like that, you may want to be wary of this. But in general, for healthy people, this has been known to boost immunity, improve circulation, and also lift your mood. I don't know if you've ever gotten into like really cold water. I know I've gotten into some pretty cold pools. There is kind of a refreshing feeling when you come out. You might feel a little bit numb, but at the same time, it's like, whoa, that woke me up, right? So maybe something you want to consider. Then on Friday, we've got a couple stories. Monica in Romania gives us a tour of a salt mine, which is located in the Carpathia Mountains in Romania. Monica is really good at giving us tours of places in her country. And this could be, all these have like historical references, right? She's shown us different castles and things like that in the past. But this is really interesting. So this is a salt mine. And I know one of the photos that she had, oh my gosh, the ceiling was huge. I mean, just huge. Like it almost looked like an underground, deep underground military base or dumb, except it was prettier than that. But like, I mean, just huge. I mean, the people look like little ants, in this picture. And they showed us like different areas of the salt mine and talked a little bit about the benefits. As I understand it, this is Europe's largest salt mine. So if you want to check that out, you can learn a little bit of the history of it and some of the benefits of this type of salt, consuming this type of salt, and learn a little bit more about Romania. And then Mariola in Ireland does a story. She shows us her favorite walking trail in a town called Tallow. And this particular trail, she shows us like some of the statues. There's like some really amazing wooden statues, at least it look wooden. It's just a beautiful trail, very welcoming atmosphere, lots of like birds and different species like that you might be able to find. So again, she's just showing us something that's important to her, and it's right in her backyard, right where she lives. All right, let's talk about our New Earth story. So this is a part of the newscast where we want to inspire you guys, because there's a lot that we haven't been told about who we are as humanity, our amazing gifts that we have. And we also like to showcase stories to give you inspiration of where our planet is going, because the news is usually just gloom and doom. I mean, I worked in the news business for a while, and, if it bleeds, it leads. But I don't think that's where news is going. I think we're kind of tired of all of that. So we want to encourage you guys and uplift you guys with positive, inspiring stories of people that are already making a difference. Even now, as the world seems crazy and corrupt, there are people that are doing amazing things that don't always get highlighted. But we usually kick off this segment with a short interview. So I interview different people and ask them different things based on their expertise. So on Monday, I talked to Stephanie Ariel. She is a certified aromatherapist, knows a lot about essential oils, has her own business. In fact, we are partnering with Stephanie to create our own, it's our own blend of essential oils that we're going to be selling. And this is super high quality. Kim has talked about it on the news before, but I decided to do a whole series of these shorter segments with Stephanie to tell you more about essential oils, since we're going to have this new essential oil blend come out. And so Stephanie in this segment is talking about the benefits of essential oils, not just, oh, they're good for you, they uplift you, they do all, there's medicinal benefits, because we've kind of talked about that in the past. But we specifically talk about, okay, if it's inhaled, so you're breathing in the essential oil, how does that impact you? And why is that a good thing? Why is it good for some essential oils to be applied through the skin? Right? So you may mix it with coconut oil or something like that, and you mix it and you put it on maybe the bottoms of your feet or your hands, or, I put some like in my third eye area, my temple area, maybe in the back of the neck. And then we also briefly talk about consuming essential oils. So if you're interested in that, be sure to check out that segment on Monday. On Wednesday, we had Allison Ellsbury on the show. I love Allison. We have been doing more segments about how important our children are, because I know a lot of times kids are kind of overlooked, like, oh, we've got to teach them, we've got to do all this. Not really with the new kids on the block. The new kids that are coming into this planet now and have been for the last decade or so are prepared for this new earth transition. Allison calls herself a New Earth Soul Guide, and I think that's a perfect title for her because she specifically focuses on children and the difference that they're here to make, and also some of the struggles that they have being of a different mindset, that their spirit, they're wired differently, guys. We've talked a little bit about this in the past. So this segment on Wednesday is about the importance of the body connection for children. So what in the world does that mean? So these kids are so much of spirit that one of the challenges some of them have is recognizing the connection of their spirit to their body, which may sound a little bit strange, but I have to tell you, this was an amazing example of synchronicity this week. So on Wednesday, we released this segment. On Tuesday night, I had a specific experience involving this. So I'll try to make the story really short here. But my girls and I, we were watching TV. This is right before bed, and they fell asleep. And I got my girls up, or at least I was trying to get them to go to bed. It was time for them to go to bed. They had school the next day. And my one daughter refused to get up. She was having kind of a little hissy fit about everything, which is kind of, she has done, she's a kid, okay? I'm not going to say that she hasn't thrown a temper tantrum in the past. She has, but this was unique. And it didn't even really feel like it was her. But it caused a lot of drama because she was basically screaming and everyone else was trying to sleep, and it was a nightmare, and it went on for over an hour. So I went into a different room and I just kind of said a quick prayer, talked to God, source, and I said, I don't know what to do right now. And the response that I got was basically what I already knew, that she's not acting like herself, and that I needed to have grace with this. And eventually she was just going to get tired and go to bed. Well, as it turns out, that's exactly what happened. And the next day, I asked God for a little bit more information. I'm like, I really need to help my daughter. So can you give me more information on this? And the response that I got was that she was basically astro traveling at night. So she was having out-of-body experiences, going elsewhere with her mind, with her spirit. Her body was still there, of course. But when she was coming back, she was having a hard time connecting with her body. And this caused a lot of frustration, and that's the reason for the anger. So when I would wake her up out of a deep sleep, she'd be very confused. And this was actually proven to be true the next day because I asked my daughter, listen, what happened? She didn't even remember any of it happened. So I just wanted to share that story with you because this kind of stuff that we talk about is very real. And as you will find, as we keep moving forward and the planet becomes cleaner and clearer, you will have these amazing synchronicities. Some people call them coincidences, but I don't believe in coincidences, so I call them synchronicities. And it was just incredible that I got that firsthand information and experience, and the next day we ran the segment. All right, end of story. Moving on. So on Friday, we had Jeff Feynman on the show. He is a holistic veterinarian, and I know a lot of you guys are pet lovers. You know, we love our dogs and our cats, and even if you have exotic pets, that's amazing as well. And we want to know the best way to take care of them. A lot of times we are talking about the food that we eat as humans, and we're questioning what they're putting in our food and all of that. Well, what about the food that we're giving our dogs and cats and our pets in general? But this segment focuses on dogs and cats. And basically what Jeff says, and, you know, watch the segment if you want all the details, but it's really about getting the most natural food possible. And what they are putting in pet food, you know, is processed, and it's really kind of gross. It's actually more processed if it's dry. That's why there's more of a push towards wet pet food, right? Dog food, cat food. We don't do that in my house. We just have this big bag of stuff for our golden doodle. And I always feel bad giving it to her. And I know she wants more of the human food, but me giving her a piece of pizza is not helping her because that's processed too. But if I have organic apples, well, then heck yeah. Or I know she loves avocado and just natural things like that. We should be co-communing with our animals. We could totally do that. But all of our food is nasty and processed as well. So a lot of the food that we eat isn't good for our animals because it's not actually good for us. So really interesting segment with Jeff. I encourage you guys to check that out. All right, let's talk about a few stories that still fall into New Earth that are just inspirational. So I want to talk to you about marine life and the sounds, the beautiful sounds that come out of the ocean. There's actually a name for this, ecoacoustics. Now, after 2 decades of sound research, scientists have uncovered a vibrant marine ecosystem, and they say it's a symphony of sounds. So I used to scuba dive, but if you just swim, you probably see this as well, or hear this, I guess I should say, in the ocean or perhaps even in lakes. But everything is talking, right? You know, the fish, you know, even fish, you know, they open their mouths and, you know, bubbles come out. And it's just amazing if you just, you know, pause for a second and listen. I love how they phrase that, a symphony of sounds. And they found by playing healthy reef sounds over damaged areas, because you've heard about our coral reefs are dying. If they somehow were to capture what it sounds like for healthy reefs and they play it over damaged reefs, that the damaged reefs start to revitalize. So they start to come back to life, as well as the fish populations. In fact, they say they've seen a doubling of fish populations when they play these natural ecoacoustics, which is fantastic. I mean, our planet is made to rejuvenate, and so are our bodies, by the way. So all this damage that has been done can be undone simply through nature and by examples of healthy ecosystems thriving. And in this case, coral, and all the amazing things that are inside the coral and around the coral. It's just amazing what our planet can do. Okay, let's talk about a creative project now in the UK that is turning former homeless people into tour guides for their cities. To me, this kind of makes a lot of sense. They're saying this teaches them public speaking, customer service, even IT skills. And it probably depends on the person, right? Obviously, not every homeless person is going to be good for this. But there's a lot of people that you would be surprised that are homeless that really don't have a home. You know, we're seeing this, and we've been reporting on this. More and more people, you know, the cost of living is going up. So maybe this is someone that is recently homeless, but it makes sense, right? So they teach them a lot of different skills and obviously teach them about the area so they can become tour guides. And I believe the article said they charge about $19 USD per tour, and then the income is split. So some of the income goes to the guides, and then some of it goes back into the organization who is coaching and facilitating all of this. So really interesting. And our final story for the New Earth is about saving toads. And I'm going to throw frogs in there too. Frogs and toads. So volunteers across Europe are rescuing frogs and toads during their annual migration to breed. And I love the name of their group. It's called Toads on Roads. And they help coordinate people to do different things to cause awareness of this migration pattern because we don't want the frogs and toads to be hurt. So they install warning signs. Sometimes, if it's really important, they may close a road. They even physically carry the toads and frogs in buckets in bulk, if you will, across the road so they don't get hurt. And then I'm also hearing more about new construction projects and how they are trying to create tunnels and fences and really going above and beyond to make sure wildlife is safe if it needs to get to the other side. It reminds me of the joke, right? How did the, chicken cross the road? Well, hopefully Toads on Roads was nearby. Now in our regional news, as I mentioned earlier, we do a lot of these stories in the news. So in order to condense this down for a quick review of our stories throughout the week, I basically pick a few different categories, things that I see repeated in multiple newscasts. So we're going to talk about jobs and employment. I've got a few stories under that. Media and journalism, 4 stories there. And then health and medical, we've got another 4 stories. I'm going to try to go through these pretty quickly. Under jobs and employment, we did a story about a surge of job scams that is targeting U.S. college students. So it starts with a legitimate looking email, which I know, sometimes we get fooled by those, let's face it. And then if they respond, there's an interview over text or some sort of chat platform. And then they provide some sort of job offer that requires buying equipment with a provided check. But the problem is the check isn't good. So when the check bounces, then the victims could lose thousands of dollars. So this is an issue. So make sure, I don't trust any kind of job offers through the mail or through email. Make sure you're actually talking to someone, guys, and make sure it's legit. In Australia, there is a committee that is advising a big increase in the job seeker payment, which here in the U.S., we call this like money you would get for unemployment, so your unemployment payment. And in Australia, that number, the payment, is currently much lower than the age pension as well as the minimum wage. And basically, this has been a problem for a while, but this committee is bringing this out into the open and saying you have to increase this. People can't even live on this. This is, below the poverty level. Now, the government has responded and basically said, don't get your hopes up. So we'll see what happens there, but we know that governments don't have money. So this idea of increasing anything, the governments, they truly can't afford it, but this is something that needs to be addressed. I just don't think the governments are going to help. Also in Australia, we have something called placement poverty. Now here in the U.S., we don't use the same terminology necessary, but here's what's going on. So students in Australia are concerned about the government's new payment plan for those on mandatory placements. Now, I had to actually look this up. I'm like, what's a placement? A placement is kind of like an internship. So over in Australia, they have sometimes mandatory placements or internships that these students have to be involved with. But the students are already paying money to go to college. They have financial struggles. And this is in addition to that, and they're just trying to get their course requirements, right? Obviously, this is impacting less affluent students more than students that have more money. But they're raising this as an issue because if this is going to be mandatory and if they've got to work in order to fulfill a course requirement, they need to get paid more money, right? They can't be, living in poverty as well. All right, let's transition and talk a little bit about media and journalism. So we've got 4 stories here. The first one, Israel raids Al Jazeera. I'm seeing this more and more. Obviously, it's of concern, and that is the government is making up these bogus, what appear to be bogus excuses for shutting down media outlets. So Israel has raided and started the shutdown of Al Jazeera's operations in Jerusalem. The government has declared the Qatar-owned network a security threat. They confiscated equipment and blocked their content across cable, satellite, and internet. So we don't know exactly what's going on here. What I am seeing more and more of, though, is this is what it appears to be happening, that the journalists are starting to speak out more and trying to get legitimate information to the public, which hasn't happened in the past because there's all these handlers and controllers, like I mentioned earlier in this podcast episode. You have all these control elements that prevent, usually, journalists from getting information out there. Well, if those control elements are going away, then you could have more and more legitimate journalists trying to share information. Well, the government doesn't like that because they're used to controlling everything. So when I see stories like this, it is definitely of concern. We have another story about journalists fleeing Pakistan. So journalists in Pakistan are facing unprecedented threats as well as financial crisis. Many of them are choosing to flee the country to North America as well as Europe. They are being summoned for questioning over their content. So it sounds like there could be some potential legal issues there. So you're seeing journalists just say, it's not worth it. I'm either getting out of this profession, I'm going somewhere else so I can do my reporting, because they are being attacked in various ways. Also, here's a sign of the times. Stock photographers are raising some questions about AI and how it's impacting their industry. They say the rise of AI, or artificial intelligence, is causing some photographers to worry about their job security. Stock photography has decreased in demand because they think they can just create whatever through artificial intelligence. And the image pricing has dropped dramatically as well. So if someone wants to buy a stock image, the prices are a lot lower than what they used to pay in the past. Now, we're seeing this come up a lot in the creative fields, and that is how, AI is here. I like to think of it more as organic intelligence as far as what we'll be using in the future, not necessarily artificial intelligence. But we still have to kind of figure out, how is this going to work and where do you draw the line? There's a lot of issues that have to be considered when it comes to media and journalism, and this is a big one, obviously, for photographers. And our final story is about Argentina removing Telesur. So they are censoring Telesur. They are a media outlet known for dissenting voices. Again, okay, I feel like this is similar to Israel and raiding Al Jazeera. They are restricting their operations, and Telesur has vowed to continue its mission. Good for them. Moving on to health and medical. I've got 4 stories for you here. In Kenya, there was this huge national doctor strike. It actually began in mid-March. Now that is finally concluded. This was over demands for better wages as well as working conditions, and it caused a lot of problems. I'm not saying they shouldn't have, gone and done their strike, because this is a problem we're seeing all over the place. Everyone needs better wages and working conditions, but it did disrupt public health services. There were millions of people whose care was affected by this, but at least it's over. They've come up with some sort of agreement, so that's good. In the UK, there is a rising demand for self-pay healthcare, and this includes surgeries and treatments not covered by insurance or their national health service. They say many patients are paying out of pocket right now. About 8% of people are even borrowing money for these procedures and then paying out of pocket. And you also see health providers are starting to team up with lenders to offer financial plans. So sounds like they need some other options for self-pay in order to get these services they want that aren't being covered. Also in England, there are critical drug shortages, and it's putting people at risk, especially these pharmacies. They're just not able to fill these prescriptions. It's affecting hundreds of different types of drugs. We've talked about this before, how a huge amount, I believe we said it was 80% of all pharmaceuticals come from China. That is a fact. And so we are obviously not on the best terms with China since they've wanted to take over the world globally. So there's going to be strains in the whole supply chain, right? So this is affecting a lot of different drugs. It's leading to delayed treatments. People can't get the drugs, so they can't get the various treatments that they need. It's also leading to an increase in owings. So I had to I had to research this. I wasn't aware of what this is. It's when patients have to come back, like they're only given a portion of their prescription. The pharmacy owes them more of their prescription, so they have to come back for the remainder of it. So that's what's going on. And our final story is about tire toxicity in the U.S. I kind of feel like this is something we all knew, right? Tires, something that's on all of our cars. If you know anything about the cabal or the elite, they love to, create toxins wherever they can. Anything that could hurt us, that could make us more reliant on pharmaceuticals and their whole healthcare system, that's what they're all about. So surprise, surprise, but at least people are starting to take a closer look at this now. So here in the U.S., we have something called the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, which doesn't necessarily do a lot of protecting, and there's other agencies as well. But they are looking into new regulations to stop toxic effects of chemicals in the tires, which are impacting salmon deaths in the Northwest. So a lot of the issue behind this is coming from the native tribes, which is actually a good thing. So they're speaking up and they're advocating for the ban of these substances because they're the ones that are seeing the salmon die in the Northwest. And this tire pollution, it is a major source of air and water pollution in general. This boils down to what's called microplastics, and that causes a ton of problems in humans, mainly heart and lung conditions. So I grew up in Northeast Ohio, and at one point, Akron, which is probably like 10, 15 minutes from my hometown, was the rubber capital of the world. And if you don't believe me, Jeopardy even verified this. I believe it was on an episode of Jeopardy. So I actually grew up very close to the rubber capital of the world. Goodyear, all those kind of, Firestone, all those kind of companies, right? And I can tell you, going through some of those areas, the smell of rubber is not the best, right? I think we knew a long time ago that this needed to be changed. At least it's being looked into now. All right, now it's time for some clips from the World Situation Report. This is when Kimberly Goguen from the Office of the Guardian comes on the news and gives us an update on what's happening within the multiverse. So we could talk about a wide variety of things. I know most of you guys want updates on what the deep state is up to, so we've got some updates for that. We also are going to talk a little bit about care and some things that you need to know if you are creating projects. So let's get you up to speed. Let's talk about what we discussed on Monday. Kim is in the process of taking down the operating systems that the deep state is using, trying to harm humanity. Now, you have to know, you've probably heard of operating systems before, right? We've got like a Windows operating system. Maybe your PC is, using Windows. You may have a Mac computer, an Apple computer, and you have a different type of operating system. Well, there were many, many, many types of operating systems out there for various industries. And if you're going to ensure that the deep state can't harm humanity, you've got to take down their operating systems. And so what Kim has been doing is switching things up so that their operating systems don't work on dark energy, dark matter anymore, known as the Omega system, but switching them over to Alpha. I mentioned earlier, that is the system that we use to give you this kind of information and to know what's going on. It is the system that Kim uses in order to run her operations. You've heard of God, the creator of the universe, being the Alpha and the Omega. Now you know why that statement is written in various religious texts. We're actually talking about intelligence systems. Alpha is organic intelligence, meaning it comes from the creator. It runs on etheric energy. You don't even, you don't need to power it up or anything like that. And then you have artificial intelligence, okay? And that was from Omega. And that was on the other side. That was dark energy. And that system no longer exists. But you have all these little operating systems that people are still trying to use that were based on that platform. And you need to remove their ability to harm humanity wherever possible. Okay, so that's what Kim's been working on. And we've talked in the past about how she has actually changed their base platform. So when a system gets taken down, they can't even create a new one because she has altered the base platform, which used to run on dark energy and, a whole system from the Omega system, no longer. Everything is alpha. So they don't want their system to be run by alpha because then Kim will have control over it. Does that make sense? So we're in this game of taking down operating systems wherever we possibly can. Now, the reason I'm telling you this is because these operating systems, it's correlated to the reason why you are now paying twice as much for the food that you're buying. They told you it was inflation. Well, first of all, there's really no such thing as inflation, especially as they describe it. But prices have gone up. So the question becomes, well, why are prices going up? We know they don't have any money. So is it just them trying to get more money? Not necessarily. And this is what Kim found out this week. Do you remember the deep state saying, you are going to be vaccinated one way or another? If you're not going to take the COVID jab, then, we're going to get it in your food one way or another. Well, that is actually true. There are biochips in your food. And it's not just in your food, by the way. It is in the air you breathe. It is in the water you drink. Now, I know this sounds like some crazy sci-fi situation. It is not. And it costs money to put these biochips in your food. And guess who paid for the ability for them to put biochips in your food? You did, without knowing it, of course. That is why you're now paying twice as much for the food that you buy. So here's Kim explaining how this whole process worked and what's being done about it.
So there was some talk a few years back or a couple of years ago about them vaccinating you one way or another. This is as an example. And in the course of getting rid of these operating systems that we're going a lot deeper into things than I would have ever expected. I mean, I knew financial operating systems, military, those types of things. That's kind of a well-known thing, But there was one really surprising one that they no longer have, so not to worry. But it was tied directly to the placement of biochips in food. Very similar to the biochips that were put into vaccines. So if you think because you didn't get the vaccine, however you've consumed food from your local market, then you probably have just as many biochips as they do. And the operation of those, or the ability to manipulate those biochips in your person for maleficent purposes, has ended. However, Pfizer and a number of other companies, large pharmaceutical companies whose names such as Moderna, acquired this technology, not of human origin originally, and then of human origin eventually, coming from Northrop Grumman, to put it in all your food. Everything that goes through manufacturing, canned goods, everything. It is in everything. It's in vegetables. It withstands heat. So even cooking of your food doesn't get rid of the biochips in your food. And where, how sometimes we see, especially like as school years kind of start and you see it like a lot of the flu, or you see stomach bugs, or you see, and then we kind of hear about it like, oh, it's going all throughout, say, this state or this province, and nothing to be worried about. It eventually goes away. Well, they use these biochips to create these things in humans. Now, the reason why we have seen the correlation between the COVID-19 pandemic and the rising cost of food is because somebody has to pay to put this stuff in your food. And that somebody is you.
So that's inflation.
That is your inflation on food. The rising cost in food is due to the introduction of pharmaceutical manufacturers into the profitability in the food market. That's why costs have nearly doubled, because you're actually paying for your vaccines one way or another, whether you went into a clinic and got a jab or you are getting it through your food, and now we are paying for it. So is this going to continue? Well, without the operating system for the biochips that are in food, are they going to continue to keep the price of food high to pay the drug companies? Does it serve them to do that? That's the only question I have. So, and looking, when you take over an operating system, meaning we're turning it from their system and their base platform to our base platform, meaning alpha harmonic genesis, they no longer have the accessibility to manipulate things using it or to create another platform like it, because their base platform has gone away.
Right.
The more platforms that go away, the angrier they get. And today we have hit a very high peak.
Kim, can I ask a question before we move on about, if we have consumed these biochips, is there anything that we need to know? I mean, obviously it's not connected to anything, but I feel a little weird thinking that I ate some biochips, quite frankly.
Well, me too.
Yeah. Is there anything that we should be doing, like regular detoxification, the stuff that we always talk about? What will it eventually come out? Is it something that's stuck in our body?
No, it'll eventually come out. Heavy metal detoxes probably wouldn't hurt. Yeah. Like I'm a big fan of the Folium Immuno product that Dr. Babry, he is a doctor now, Dr. Babry puts out simply because it reduces all effects of radiation, because, these things don't, they run on radiation, they run on your Wi-Fi, you feel kind of upset when you grab your phone sometimes, or whether it's an emotional thing or a physical thing, to rid the body of them faster and to reduce any effects. Also other things you can do, pine parts are great for that. So pine part tea, I know they make it in capsules, is great for reducing the damage that may have been done by the biochips when they were in effect. There are many different heavy metal detoxes out there on the market. I'm kind of a big fan of just, making the smoothie once a week. It's blueberries, cilantro, orange, fresh squeezed orange. This is a medical medium thing. So if you're a fan of the medical medium, you know the one I'm talking about. And that works pretty well, I think. There's also cilantro essential oils you can take. Chlorophyll is another great one for ridding heavy metals from the body, and that's pretty much what you need to do at this point.
Is there any way for us to be able to detect what food this is in, or it was just in all food? There was no escaping this if you were shopping at a grocery store.
If you weren't getting it from the air and you weren't getting it from your food, then you're getting it from the water supply. It doesn't matter what you do as a human being, you are not going to avoid this.
Well, that's what they said.
Yep, that's what they said, and that's exactly what they have done.
Okay, so the reason that we're talking about this now is not to scare you guys, because fear is not a natural human emotion. It is not something that we are supposed to dwell on. It is supposed to be a fleeting moment or emotion that we have to encourage us to change, but we do not live in fear. So the purpose of giving you this information is to let you know, first of all, why the increase in your food, but also the information that Kim gave about how you can detoxify if you want, because if you're anything like me, you don't really want biochips in your body. And it's also to let you know that even though you may have biochips in your body, there is no operating system behind it. That has been taken away. So if you hear things in alternative media being said, maybe about the Internet of Things, right? Which was their plan to basically be able to control your body in various ways remotely through these operating systems. It is not going to happen. So we're trying to demystify this and also give you clear information about what they have the capability to do and what they don't have the capability to do. And their toys are being taken away very quickly. And they don't like it too much. Okay? But that's the situation. And this goes far beyond food. So much could be controlled remotely. Remember that story? It was probably a couple months ago now. I believe it was in Delaware where that ship crashed into the bridge and every news outlet was playing it over and over again. Oh, is the engine on? Is the engine off? Oh, what are they doing? That is a perfect example of them using this technology. That was all done remotely. And it was intentional to crash it. But now you know how this kind of stuff works, right? It's not as scary when you understand it, especially when you know that the system's been taken down. But they could do this for ships. They could do this with your car. I know that kind of gets scary. Suddenly the brakes don't work. That is a very real thing. They could do this. They could down airplanes. So this is massive. Our ability to be able to take over this operating system is massive. Kim also on Monday talked about something called the Aeon Flux. And I'm not going to play a soundbite for it, but you can listen to the newscast if you want more information. This was a 48-hour period, which happened between Saturday and Monday. We have talked about Source, God, the creator of the universe, anti-source, which some people refer to as maybe like a Lucifer or Satan, some sort of cosmic energy that is opposite of God. So that would be anti-source. And then you have something called neutral source. And we've talked about all these in the past. If you're new, this may not, ring a bell. But there's a time period where all three of those come together and align perfectly. It is a time of no age. And the deep state knew that this time was coming up, and they thought that they could get back control of the Omega system. They thought Omega was going to overtake Alpha at that point. That did not happen. So Kim talks more about that on Monday's report if you want to check that out. Now, on Wednesday, we're talking more about operating systems. We're talking more about the deep state now looking for some sort of alternative to Omega. So, okay, Omega's not going to come back online. Do we have any other AI systems or any operating systems that we can have access to destroy humanity? Because that's basically what they have been trying to do. And the short answer is no, they don't. And they no longer have any eyes and ears to be able to communicate with each other and do some of these dastardly deeds that they were planning. That is thanks to ground command. And this has to do with the Committee of 300, which you may have heard about that term in the past. It is a group of people, I think there's corporations listed on there. And they had a long list of banks that they said they control. They claim that they control the holding companies of all of those banking institutions. And this was essentially going to be the new currency for the deep state. So they issued a bunch of vouchers and IOUs to people that they owed money to. We know they owe a lot of people money, right? And that didn't work out so well for them because Ground Command, meaning Kimberly Goguen, took over their operating systems and zeroed out their accounts. Here's more info from Kim.
As you know, the deep state was desperately hunting for some kind of an Omega backup system that they thought was going to go into effect last night. Of course, always during a new moon, full moon, during the flux new moon, I guess. Maybe they thought they had it. But alas, nothing happened by yesterday afternoon, and this left them kind of in a panic, and more so because there was a second part that had been going on for a couple of weeks now, and I thought I'd share it with you now because then they know now that I know, which is important. Okay, if you've been kind of around for a while, you've probably seen a lot of documentation online about the Committee of 300.
Oh, yeah.
And some of these documents show like a long list. They're about 100 pages long or so. They show a long list of banks worldwide that they allegedly control with large numbers beside them. Now, these documents are kind of well known. They've been spread all over the internet. So if not, then I will go ahead and I'll post it in community chat so you can take a look at it, just so you know what I'm talking about. And in part, the Committee of 300 allegedly claims, based on these documents, that they control the holding companies of all of these banking institutions.
Mm-hmm.
Now, to some degree, holding companies also had an operating system of their own. So I spent several hours the other day kind of preparing for what I saw coming. Because all operating systems were kind of alpha omega dual operating systems, what we've been doing is we've been converting these to alpha harmonic genesis operating systems, therefore eliminating any view from omega. So these accounts, although they didn't hold any real money in them because they had no allocation numbers, you could still see the holding companies within the financial system at the higher levels.
Mm-hmm.
And by higher levels, I'm meaning family levels and above government levels, those kinds of places. So someone which claimed to be, and I still don't know quite who this person is in their name, who claimed to be a descendant of the Committee of 300 heir of something or other, decides that he's going to take all of these accounts, show them to countries, and explain to them that on the 7th, these accounts would then go live and become active. So they began issuing a tremendous amount of vouchers to various people, IOUs, if you will. And by people, I don't mean like you and I mean like the royal family of Saudi Arabia, some terrorist organizations throughout the Middle East. They issued them to militaries. They issued them in a lot of different places. And so I've kind of been watching this as the new currency of the deep state.
Mm-hmm.
You know, always going to be good at a day ending in Y in the future. And that night was last night. They also have tried doing some business, I should say again, with a group called the Boko Haram in Africa. So they pretty much operate mostly in Western Africa. They have a lot of cash, actual physical cash, and a lot of it is super notes. And they've been unable to launder that money into the system since the shutdown a few years back by yours truly of a United Nations black site in Kenya. So they were happily laundering their money for decades now through this United Nations facility in Kenya until it was shut down, probably about 2 or 3 years ago now. Mm-hmm. And so the Treasury Department and the Bank for International Settlements thought that they would help them out and figured they could use allocation numbers from all of their stacks of cash to legitimize some of this money that is on off-ledger accounts in these holding company accounts. Well, so, you know, we watched them try to set it up. They also tried to use these holding company accounts for their new digital currency system, which they tried again to relaunch yesterday. There was a large meeting going on at the Bank for International Settlements yesterday with the global headquarters folks and some military people worldwide trying to get the system up and running based on these accounts that are just basically numbers on a computer screen. Mm-hmm. So that failed miserably. And by late afternoon yesterday, everybody kind of started to panic. Now, they worked all night long. God bless their souls. They worked so hard last night to try to make all of these scams work for them. They brought people in from the U.S. Treasury, to go to different locations around the world. They really thought they had it. But we were prepared for this untenuous situation because we had been watching it for a while. And the one thing you always want to use in warfare is the element of surprise. You never show your hand. You never tell them what you're going to do. You don't, we might load things behind the scenes, programs and those types of things set to go off at a certain time or day based on what we expect to happen. Mm-hmm. Now, based on the fact that this did not work out, we figured by very early morning Eastern Standard Time today, everybody would be in a full-on panic by then. Now, due to the fact global headquarters are predominantly based in the United States, we figured since they worked all night, that we would probably set this to go off sometime around 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time this morning, because then they'll probably be getting up, after a long night of zero accomplishment. So we set off the following things to go off at this specific time. Mm-hmm. So every single one of those banks listed on the documents, and there are hundreds listed on there, we set it off to take over all of the holding companies' operating systems starting at 7 a.m. this morning. Not only that, we also made sure at the same time when we took them over, and they're now listed as under the Office of the Guardian, we zeroed out every single one of the accounts.
Oh my gosh.
Yep. At the same time, we also shut down the base platform for militaries worldwide, intelligence worldwide, NATO, the base back-end platform for internet security. Now, we are now running on our VTN, or virtual trusted network, which is a little bit more secure than a VPN, if you're familiar with the term. We also shut down all treasury systems, everything everybody has on the front end from the base platform. So we have not been slacking in any way, but we set all these events to go off one after the other. So basically, anything that they have as far as deep state is concerned, and unfortunately governments are concerned, are now pretty much shut down. They have no eyes and ears. Then we proceeded to finish off the financial system with backbones of tax authorities and other types of things. So everybody's having database problems this morning because, we've kind of come to the conclusion that governments aren't really doing anything. They're just kind of a tool in the toolbox for the deep state. They're not helping the people any, this isn't really working out. We've given them hundreds of chances to come forward and have a conversation with us. Nobody wants to. And then there's always this line of buying time to the next new moon, full moon, you name it. The next location I hear they're all going to try this in is on the full moon, 2 weeks from yesterday. And they'll be going to Malaysia this time. So I know, God bless them, right?
Yeah.
And none of this is going to work. So the lies had to end. So by zeroing out the holding companies, that doesn't affect you in any way, shape, or form. This is all these genetic shareholders, alleged bank assets that they never had, leverage against your deeds. For example, if you get a mortgage on your house, they get 25 times, 100 times. This is the source of all the high yield trade programs that they do with governments. And, you see it kind of in the broker world, where you can get 800 times in like so many days. And you've probably seen medium-term notes, coming around from the World Bank or those types of things. These are the programs that I'm talking about that used to run on these types of accounts. Also a lot of wars were funded from them, off-market trading, credit lines, these types of things. But as of this morning, everything pretty much erupted into a giant zero. Zero communication lines, zero access, zero ownership over the financial system anymore, no ability to hide it anymore. And we have a few more steps yet to go, but we do not want to tell them about it ahead of time. Mm-hmm. So this is a strategy to whereby they got caught completely off guard. Not only that, those vouchers weren't good. So they're getting it from me on every single level today, but they're also getting it not only from me, they're also getting a lot of, let's just say, problems and issues by people calling saying, hey, these accounts are zeroed out. Where's my voucher? Where's my money? Everything was supposed to be due today, and of course that didn't work out. In addition to that, our Raymond Reddington crew that was hired by the cartels you asked me about the other day, we'll just call them the Raymond Reddingtons, and that's from the show Blacklist in case you don't watch it. He's a fixer of freelancers. All their contracts went into effect, full force last night. And everybody went into a full-on panic.
So is anyone feeling sad for the deep state about all this? Yeah, me neither. Kim also goes on to talk a little bit more about CARE and the media. So we're talking about mainly mainstream media now, because since we have taken over all of these operating systems and assets of the deep state, that includes mainstream media, because that was the mouthpiece for the deep state. And they would just push practically whatever narratives the deep state asked them to. And we know that this is still happening. And we've heard from a lot of you, and the question is always, do you take down these media systems so people can actually get the truth? Because really, they're just, they just keep repeating the same thing, and they've got their agenda, and they talk about wars and pandemics and anything that is set to divide humanity. So do we need to take down these systems? I'm not going to play a soundbite from this, but Kim and I got into a fairly long conversation about what could be done. What is the best way to handle this? And we also put a call out to you guys to say, hey, what do you think is the best way to handle this? Because the lies are going out constantly. And if humanity needs to know the truth, well, some people might say just take down mainstream media, but you have to understand that is some people's just way of life. And that could be very disrupting overall to our society. So is that really the best thing to do, even though we can't stand what mainstream media is saying? If ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox, all of those stations suddenly don't have a broadcasting license because the Office of the Guardian has taken it away, then how are people going to get information? Are they going to view this as some sort of, something from China? Is the deep state going to make something up about, oh, this is, China attacking the U.S.? I mean, what in the world? I mean, and this would happen beyond the U.S., but you see what I'm saying, right? That's not necessarily the best thing for humanity. So if you have ideas on how this could work, the best thing is to hop on our app, especially under this episode, which was Wednesdays, and drop us a line or reach out to us perhaps on Telegram if you're part of our Telegram groups, and let us know what you think. Because Kim's, in the process of trying to figure out what do we do with mainstream media, because they're just lying constantly. All right, moving on. On Friday, I've got one more soundbite that I want to share with you guys, and this is focused on CARE, so the Center for Amity and Restoration of Earth, and creating projects. So if you don't already know, CARE is the organization basically that is going to replace the United Nations, but what the United Nations should have been, because it never was what they told us it was, okay? A lot of nefarious, nasty stuff that the United Nations has done, okay? They are a terrorist group. And so if we had a group that was set for restoration of mankind, of humankind, what would that look like? And how would we change this planet? And you guys are an important part of this, because we're always encouraging you guys to think about what you're passionate about. Because what you're passionate about is what you should be doing. Not a 9-to-5 job you cannot stand. That is not helping humanity at all. And it's probably not helping the company you're working for either, because it's really hard to stay positive when you're doing a job you can't stand, right? So one of the things, as soon as funding is available, and I believe it's going to be very soon, you will be able to submit projects to CARE, and CARE will fund your projects if it is designed to help humanity. So as people are creating their projects, and Kim has been talking about this for a while, for years, really, submitting projects and, humanity's role in all of that. But on Friday, she specifically talked about this invisible glass ceiling. When we hear the term invisible glass ceiling, we think of salary and pay, but that's not actually what we're talking about here. The deep state, and that's just a simple way to say it, the deep state, anyone that was out there to harm humanity, there was a whole system designed to ensure that you are not successful at any business you create. Not overly successful. You can make X amount of money or whatever, but if you really wanted to change the system and take down, let's just say, we know there's a lot of natural cures out there. We do not need the healthcare system as it is out there today. It's actually a sick care system. They profit on keeping you sick, not making you healthy. And we know there's a lot of natural remedies for a lot of things out there that people are struggling with, but you don't make a lot of money with things that are natural because you cannot patent that. You cannot put a copyright on that. That is natural. And so that doesn't make money for the deep state. That doesn't fill their pockets. And so anyone that was trying to do that, either they disappeared from this planet or they were subdued in some way. People have been thrown in jail or worse, or threatened, or it gets caught up somehow, in the patent system. I mean, there's a million different ways that this could happen. Kim does not want that to happen to you guys. As we are taking down these systems, a lot of them have to go away. But in the beginning, we may still be dealing with some of this stuff. Depending on what these operatives end up doing, are they going to come and start helping humanity if funding is available? We don't really know. So at this point, if you are working on a CARE project, there are certain things that you need to consider to not run into some of these traps that the deep state has set for you. This falls under the non-compete plan, if you've heard of that before. Bush Sr. was largely responsible for that. So here's Kim talking a little bit more about some of these roadblocks that they had set up for us and what you should consider as you're creating your project.
The CARE organization is responsible, and that means multiple people, it's not just one person, will be responsible for completing a restoration of all systems of society in which we live. Mm-hmm. So the way we get our food, the way we get our water, the way we house ourselves, travel, everything has to be revamped and revised. And as a part of that, it's important to understand what I call the invisible glass ceiling, because this will come up and will be a problem and is going to be a system unto itself that we need to unwind. Mm-hmm. Now, the invisible glass ceiling, and by glass ceiling, I mean it refers to us average everyday humans and why we cannot make it past a certain point in business, even if we create an amazing product or we create an amazing service or a medical innovation or whatever it is. And it's more than just where they hunt down scientists and, all of the stories that we've heard and we know are true. Mm-hmm. But I really cannot stress enough, and I've talked about it a little bit, about the non-compete plan that has been written and revised and rewritten to fit every different global power center. So the one that was supposed to be upcoming has a lot to do with China and China becoming the world's power center versus the United States. And this is a plan that has been in play for a long time with the deep state. Mm-hmm. Now, industry control is more than just, for example, preventing you from getting a license, preventing you from making a certain amount of money, being approached by the cabal. There was always a centralized point that was created in order to firstly create the system. But then in addition to that, we have specific raw material control systems that were also put in place.
Mm-hmm.
So say, for an example, there is a medical technology. Let's just use medical technology because this extends far beyond that into asphalt, into roads, into car parts, into all different kinds of things. Anything under the sun that you could imagine that requires any kind of raw or manufactured raw materials, meaning they have converted them into anything that goes into everything that's in your house. So everything you own, every consumer product has some part to play in this industrial control system.
Mm-hmm.
So they have created, let's just say the deep state has created a medical technology that is meant to placate your symptoms because they like that. You know, they're not big for cures. They would like to keep you on some kind of medication or something at all times. So this medical technology that they have created requires, let's just say, a specific rare earth mineral in order to function. Now, perhaps there are several technologies that they have created in different industries that require the same raw material to manufacture. And it would be impossible to create another one without that specific raw material. Mm-hmm. So what they do then is they send out groups of operatives, and their job is to go over and take over every single place in the world, in every mining operation in the world that would be responsible for mining this particular rare earth mineral. So let's just say you, Sonny, come along several years later and you create a similar type technology, but that might actually work better, might actually provide a cure. You know, maybe you are creating a competing product in any one of the industries which they use this rare earth mineral. So here's what's going to happen to you. Now, they get these raw materials for pretty close to free. Therefore, it's a very highly profitable machine for them, number one. Number two, it's serving its function by placating symptoms and not ever having a cure. So that's important to understand, where yours may actually cure over time, let's just say, as an example. And they get them for, you know, a fairly good cost. Therefore, the cost of their device is, let's just say it's $1,000. You know, in the medical world today, there's hardly anything. You can't even get aspirin 7 days in a row in a hospital for $1,000.
True.
But let's just say the cost for this, you know, all intents and purposes for this example is $1,000. Now, you have, you know, tested yours, it's patented, it's proven, it's all of these things. But because you need the same rare earth mineral to produce your machine, the cost for you, what cost them maybe say $1 for X amount of this rare earth mineral, will cost you $10,000.
Wow. Yeah.
Therefore, you're now priced out of the market, because if you had paid $10,000 for this small amount to make one, say, machine, you know, and their machine is $1,000, you couldn't never put yours into the marketplace. You couldn't compete.
Right.
Now, they've done this with every single type of material, from lumber or wood, whatever you call it, down to, you know, another way this is done. This is another perfect example most recently. So Russia produces a specific type of nickel. And this specific type of nickel has specifications that allow it to be used for specialty parts, say in oil drilling or in vehicles or these types of things. Now, in Russia, this currently is the only place in the world that is mining this specific nickel. And they have sanctioned recently, within the last several months, I think it's been about a year now, close to, all of the nickel manufacturing parties in Russia. So all of the companies that produce this specific nickel. And now, because they are all part of the black market operation, or what I call the non-compete program, they still are selling their nickel, but on the black market, and only to their companies that require this specific nickel to manufacture, say, car parts or whatever it is. So there's no harm, no foul on their end of it. They might even get it cheaper, actually, under these circumstances, which is fine by the companies because they're still making just as much money. Technically, they're using black market routes, so they don't have to pay customs and imports or anything like that, of course. And their companies are still producing these parts. But what it does to you, the car part maker, I'm just using car parts as an example. What it does to you, the car part maker, is you can no longer produce that part that you had, say, a contract with Mercedes or with a, Ford or whomever it is to produce for. So therefore, you now lose all your contracts because you can't make the parts anymore, taking you out of the business. And then therefore, now they have the contracts. It's very sneaky, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Very
and it goes beyond that. I mean, say there's a young high school student that recently came out with, won all these awards and everything because he created a soap that actually prevents skin cancer. Mm-hmm. Now, I guarantee you, if he were to ever go into the manufacturing of these soap on a high level, and it wasn't through, say, Pfizer or one of these places, I guarantee you there was probably an ingredient in there that they own. Whatever that ingredient is. If it's not synthetically made, it's probably organic. And for all I know, it could be even in some kind of an essential oil or a plant extract or something like that would actually do this. Mm-hmm. And there's many of them out there that do. So this, it would be impossible. Yes, he did something very amazing, but he'll never actually profit from it. He'll never actually get anywhere with it. And will 3M, say, ever manufacture it, even though they may have bought the technology, gave him $100,000 or something, patted him on the back, some awards, and sent him on his way. But if he ever went to try to manufacture it himself, even if he had the investment and he wasn't locked out of the financial system for trying to get a loan or some kind of on his patent, then he would be locked out in other ways. So that soap bar, which probably cost him, a few dollars or something like that, USD to make, now goes up to, $40 a bar of soap, and you can't afford $40, for a bar of soap, and there you go. Like there ends that, you're priced out of the market. You're not going to sell anything. I mean, unless it's an anti-aging thing, no one spends $40 to prevent skin. They think, oh, I'll just put my sunscreen on for, $5 that I get at Walgreens or whatever, your local drugstore. And that'll be the end of that. So this is important to understand at this moment in time. Because a lot of you are working on your projects. A lot of you are working on restoration. A lot of you are working on, like we had someone on recently that talked about a different way of doing farming, and not using those products and how expensive it can be, and they know that too. And he's lucky enough to have a farm that's been running for generations, and, he can, afford a little bit, to make a little bit less on his crops, but that doesn't mean everybody can.
Right.
But I want you to understand this: when you create something and you invent something, you need to also look at, can I source all of this stuff? Now, if mine is a cure for a disease, say, or prevents EMF radiation or something that they're trying to desperately get into you, I guarantee you that once you come out with this specific product in the market, then you are going to be running up against all of these people who specifically are in place to ensure you are not successful.
Now, speaking of things that they're trying to get into us, the other thing that Kim talks about on Friday's newscast is how the CDC, so the Centers for Disease Control, the FDA, which is the Federal Drug Administration, and the World Health Organization, so the WHO, have started rumors about this bird flu pandemic. You've probably seen different headlines, and they're having different talking heads on the news in different places, basically dropping these ideas that this could be the next big pandemic. And we have heard this time and time again, but we want to give you a little bit more information about what's going on here. Back when we had the eclipse, which was a natural eclipse, okay, that really did happen, and that was a natural event. But there were a lot of things that the deep state thought was going to happen that was going to harm humanity at that point. One of which was the release of new diseases. And you may have heard of Disease X. They were talking about that a while ago. None of their plans worked. Nothing naturally happened that would harm humanity, and they don't have any money to do anything. So this whole Disease X, anything they tried to do there is simply not working. This bird flu pandemic is just another drop in the bucket. And there are some things that are going on behind the scenes. Basically, these organizations are losing control because they told these different businesses and people that are part of this elite club that they're part of that these diseases were going to be released and they were going to get money from it and all this kind of stuff for participating in whatever lockdowns and stuff they had planned. None of that happened. I don't know if you noticed, but we're not on lockdown, right? So these organizations, these groups are now pretty much making up lies. They have to come up with something else. They're trying to save face, but, the bill is always going to come due. So they're saying that this is going to happen here shortly, but it's not going to happen. I don't really know what the point is besides just to spread fear amongst humanity. But the point is, if you are seeing headlines like this, nothing is going to happen. There's no more lockdowns. There's no more, huge amounts of, humanity passing away as a result of some deadly virus. Like, that is not going to happen. As much as they would love for it to happen, they've got no money behind it. They've got no way to distribute it. It's simply not happening. So I just want to share that with you because it may, you may start to see more and more headlines about this. And it's just not real, okay? It's maybe there are isolated cases out there, but this is not going to get to be what they were able to do with COVID, unfortunately. Okay, so that pretty much wraps up our review, guys, for the last week. What should you do now? Well, we mentioned a lot of stuff. If you're new, do some research on some of this. Look up some of the terms that we talked about. I encourage you guys to always have an open mind when you're exploring this. We talk about your cup being empty or at least half empty so you could receive more information. If you've got a full cup, you're going to be overflowing and none of this is going to stick. So for some of you, it may be information that kind of seems out there, and that's okay. But have an open mind because we've been told a bunch of lies and we're now in the process of trying to get the truth out there. And again, if your cup is full, you're not even going to hear the truth. And if we can't help you, then you can't help someone else, right? So this is all about humanity coming together and supporting one another. Always ask questions, always think critically. And if you enjoyed today's show and this podcast in general, please share it with someone you care about, perhaps a family member or a good friend, so we can help them out as well. For more information, you can go to unitednetwork.earth. That's where you can subscribe. You can become a member, get on-demand access to all of our UNN newscasts, the complete world situation reports, not just snippets that we provide here on the podcast. And we also have some original series you guys can check out. And if you want to leave some comments, Kim and I are usually in the chat. We've got a whole section called United Chat. That's our online community that you can post different things, but also if you just comment under the videos in the newscast section, then we try to answer as many of those as possible. And you can also follow us on social media. We've got a great team that is pushing out content through social media and creating clips from our newscast and putting it out there so we can inform as many people as possible. If you want those links, they are at the bottom of our website. Just go to the bottom navigation and all of the links are there. All right. Thanks so much for listening, guys. This is The Rundown, and I'm Sunny Galt for United Network News, signing off.